Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen wa Qasim Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad. Allah says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil Qadr. I want to welcome everyone, inshallah. Inshallah, Allah accepts our acts in the holy month of Ramadan. And usually we think of Ramadan as fasting because that's the most obvious and the most kind of concrete act that we do. The Holy Quran says, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That the month of Ramadan, first and foremost, is the month of the Quran. The Quran is the ma'adibatullah, is the banquet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sufre. And inshallah we can all partake of that in this month. Of course, fasting is one of the essential things of Islam, fasting in the month of Ramadan. And this is just one kind of side point I want to bring up about dururiyat, about things that are essential. There are certain things in Islam that are part of the essence of Islam. And fasting, salat, are these acts, there's about 10 that are absolutely essential and that there's no touching them. And this also applies to our beliefs, tawheed, nabuwa, ma'ad, and for us as followers of Ahlul Bayt, Adl and Imama. It's important to also pay attention to that there's a lot of things that are not essential, that are nazari, that are speculative, that there's room for ijtihad. And in my personal opinion, I think this is one of the very neglected areas in us as Muslims and the minority in the West, is where is the lines? Where is the line between things that are dururi, like obviously fasting the month of Ramadan. Even non-Muslims know about fasting the month of Ramadan, it's in the news. And a Muslim can't deny fasting in the month of Ramadan. If a Muslim denies it, not that he doesn't or she doesn't do it, that's a different thing, but to not deny it completely, to just say that it's not, has no meaning, it's not part of Islam, this person is not a Muslim. But there's a lot of things, especially things when I'm talking, a lot of issues that we discuss, many issues that are nazari, that are, there's opinion, there's interpretation. And this is a very important point to the growth of the Muslim community anywhere, but particularly as a minority in the West, is that there's a lot of issues where it's allowed and where it's in fact important that we develop a spirit of inclusiveness of different opinions within these nazari, non-essential things. And that includes a whole list of things. I can't, even, in fact, some of the things that I say tonight or I say at other times, a lot of the things we discuss, obviously a lot of fatawa, a lot of the opinions about things in fiqh, there's difference of interpretation. Why? Because the evidence is different. One person may come to a conclusion based on this evidence, one or another. Some of these are stronger than others, but still, at the end of the day, these are issues that are not essential. If we put them aside or say, Allahu Alam, we say Allah knows best, or that these are areas where it's possible to have different opinions and to live with that with good adab and good akhlaq, and this would be very powerful, very potent way to move forward and grow and develop and be a mature community, rather, unfortunately, than a lot of the nonsense that we see online or in discussions with different people. So that's just kind of a side point, but I think it's very important about things that are essential, like the fasting in the month of Ramadan, and many other things that are not essential. And when I say not essential, I don't mean that they're maybe not important at all, that they're trivial. I don't mean trivial. I mean that there are things that if we kind of live with the different opinions, within reason, obviously, not going into any random opinion, then it's okay. It's not like, Allah will accept it if it's really we're trying and striving. And that's the meaning of ijtihad. Ijtihad is trying to find the right opinion amongst many opinions, using all of our resources, using our intellects, using all the evidence available, trying to sift through things and find the best opinion that we can, that humanly possible. Maybe it's not the absolute, maybe it's not the haqq, but inshallah Allah accepts it, and we can live with that. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So tonight, inshallah, I'm just going to touch briefly. I don't want to keep everyone, but just a little bit on Surah al-Qadr. because the month of Ramadan, according to the hadith, is the best of months, and the heart of Ramadan is Laylatul Qadr. And it's one of the very emphasized surahs by the Imams to recite in our salat, along with Surah Al-Ikhlas. So inshallah, I'm just going to touch upon a few points about this surah, maybe even just a few words. Because in the Quran, there's a lot of times we have a lot of terms. We have Laylatul Qadr. We have a lot of terms, and it's important to try to dig out what is the meaning of these terms. The first term is inna, verily we, revealed it, anzalnahu. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say we instead of I? There's different ways we explain this. Again, we could say this is just a literary convention. We have in English, although it sounds kind of pompous, we could say the royal we. We did this. I mean, in English it's not too right. Maybe this is one way to look at it. But a different way to look at it, maybe a deeper way, is to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything, and among some things He has created directly in a special way. For example, Adam alayhi salam, Inni ja'alin fil ardi khalifa, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a representative, a vice regent on earth directly. And that is Adam. And Adam may even just be, according to some interpretations, again, an archetype for the essence of the perfect human being, meaning actually Muhammad and Ahlul Bayt. Some of us. But more often than not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates through means. And this is another point I want to bring up because it ties in intellectually to an important topic that's going on now, unfortunately, that we talk about, which is the political situation in the world, in the Middle East in particular, and the gross and disgusting and inhumane violence of people that claim to be Muslim using certain arguments that I'm going to get into about tawassul. Now I got to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates things in this life and also in the physical world, but also in the metaphysical realm through means. And this is something really, if we just reflect on it a little bit, use a little bit of our aql, as the Quran says, la ta'aqalun, that they apply their reasoning, that we can just see is very obvious. For example, in this life, if someone is thirsty, someone is hungry, they go to something and they use that as a means. It's a wasila, it's a way for them to satisfy their needs. And there's many things. This is something that's just obvious and doesn't need even ayahs or riwayas. Alhamdulillah, our school of thought, Ahlul Bayt, is very strong in using aql. And aql, I know, has many meanings. We can get into all the interpretations and the controversies of aql and the things around aql. But just a little bit of consideration can lead you to things that doesn't even need per se an ayah itself to go to or riwayah. Of course, we have many ayahs and riwayahs about these things, but the aql is there. It's its own hujjah, it's its own proof. As Imam Kazim said, there's two hujjah, there's two proofs of Allah. The messengers and their successors, the saints, the awliya. It's the outer proof and the inner proof of the aql. So it's obvious that there's means we have to do things in terms of our physical life. The Quran also mentions many metaphysical means, things that are unseen and ghaib. For example, the angels, first and foremost, which is also a discussion in this very surah, which inshallah on another night, otherwise this will get very long, I can get into the discussion of the angels, which unfortunately is, especially in general amongst the Muslims, but is kind of a neglected topic. It's something we don't think of, or maybe have a kind of a superficial or vague understanding of the angels. But the Quran talks a lot, and of course the Hadith even more, about the angels' role in creation. And this is something that all Muslims agree upon, no matter what their school of thought, from the most Sufi to the most Shia to the Salafi to the everyone almost agrees that the angels, and there's many ayahs in the Quran, يَتَوَفَّاكُمْ مَلَكُ الْمَوْتِ, that the angel of death takes the soul. But Allah also takes the soul. Allah takes the soul, the angel of death. So these are all things that have to be sifted out. We have to kind of sift these things out. But the fact remains that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has means in the ghaib, in the unseen, that are doing things, that are above us. فَالْمُدَبَّرَاتِ أَمْرًا, that they are the angels, they administer the affairs. And this is something that no one can deny. No one can deny that there's, in Islam, in just our daily lives, there are these means. So then the question becomes, and this is always the issue, and it's kind of very ignorantly discussed, is what is the difference between acknowledging and going through these means, tawassul, which is the meaning of tawassul, going through these means, and saying that something is God, is shirk, which is the locus of this ridiculous controversy, but unfortunately it has a lot of other social political repercussions, is what is the difference between someone being a muwahhid, being a monotheist, being affirming Allah's oneness and His absoluteness, and being a mushrik, someone that says that associating. The difference is pretty simple. The difference is we have to ask, what is the final goal? What is it that you're looking for? What is you're looking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or for that thing? So the difference between tawheed and shirk is your goal. What is the end? When the means become an end, that's shirk. When the end is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's tawheed. This is a simple way of looking at it. And again, if you just take a step back and think about it, it's simple. Quran says, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَاي وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, my prayer and my worship, my life and my death are lillah, are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of all worlds. That's tawheed. It's impossible to not go to things. Even the Salafi goes to things, to do things. They don't just say Allah does everything and I'm going to sit here and not do anything. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. They die. They'd all die. So this is why this is a ridiculous controversy, that tawassul is a part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. It's a part of the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah is saying, Inna anzalnahu, Allah sent down the Quran through the angels. We know we say the angels brought it, Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel of wahi. All Muslims agree on this. And the difference of saying what is Tawheed wa Shirk, again, is saying that Allah is the end. Someone that gets up and drinks a glass of water is not saying the water is God. If someone said the water is God, there are maybe some mystical traditions, some philosophies, some Eastern philosophies that have a kind of pantheistic twist to things and would say everything is God. I don't know, they'd have to explain what that means. But if we said, an elephant is God or something that is God, that's an open shirk. That's open shirk. But if we go to it and we're thinking, this is the thing that did it and not Allah, that's a hidden shirk. And that's not where the Sharia is located. Because if the Sharia, in terms of who is a Muslim, who is a muwahhid, and who is a mushrik, revolves around that, then really none of us are. Because we're all thinking, that did it. We don't put our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise we'd have a different life. We'd have a different society where things would be very different. So this is the simple explanation of it. And usually, there's also to elaborate on this, because it's such a contemporary and hot issue, unfortunately, in a very ugly and very ignorant way. It's not even really intellectual, although this issue has been there. It goes back to Ibn Taymiyyah, the founders of Salafism, and Abdul Wahhab, and this Salafi line that tawassul, going to the prophets and the saints, doing ziyarah, all these things are shirk, and it puts the person outside of Islam, and therefore you can do what you want to them, a'udhu, these kind of things. They would say, again, one of their proofs is that, or their discussions is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very close to us. He's closer to us than our own jugular vein. There's many ayahs in the Quran saying, I'm near to you, call on me, for example, in the Surah Baqarah. So why do we need these other means? Well, the problem is that Allah says, ibtighu alayhi al-wasila, seek the means. So again, we have this kind of issue. Either you're saying the Quran is contradicting itself, or something is wrong here. And there's something wrong in this argument of saying that we don't go to the means because Allah is so close to us. Because Allah says in the Quran, seek the means. Well, they would come back and reply that means here does not mean what we say tawassul, and going ziyarah and things like that, and going through the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. They would say it's just salah, it's the acts of Sharia. That's the means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, we have the problem. If Allah is so close to us, why do we even need the Sharia? If He's so close to us, He could just tell each of us what to do. Or we wouldn't even need the Sharia to get closer. Because what is the point of the Sharia? All the Muslims agree that all the basic ibadah that we do, salat and the fasting, is done with what intention? I mean, what is the intention? What is it that we're doing in salat? What is it that we have to do? Is to say that this is qurbatan ilallah, that this is for nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An act done in the certain acts, certain ibadah, what they call ibadat in the Sharia. Fasting is one of the main, salah, done without intention, with no intention, just doing it, without seeking qurba, without seeking closeness to Allah, is meaningless, it's batil, it's invalid. is technically invalid. You have no, it's not a fast. It's just not, it's nothing. So then again, the question, then why are we doing this for qurba if Allah is close to us? The answer is simple. Allah is very close to us. He's close to everything. He's close to everything in creation. We are the ones that are far from Him. We are the ones that need the means to get close to Him. The means being the Sharia, meaning the Salah, meaning the fasting, meaning going to and through spiritually and intellectually and in our lives through the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. We are the ones that are in need. We are needy. Antumul fuqara Allah. We are the ones that are absolutely in need. And that again is another difference between Tawheed and Shirk. If you're saying everything in creation is absolutely needy, no matter how many perfections it has, it's still completely needy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the only one that is absolutely and completely ghani, who is absolutely and completely needless, has no need of anything at all. And that's the small but major difference between saying that, for example, the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, they had this and this and this perfections. We could list all the perfections of Ahlul Bayt. Some people, unfortunately, even some Shia, and this is an opinion, it's Nazari, but still, there's different opinions about the stations of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. What kind of perfections did they have? What kind of knowledge did they have? It's an academic issue. It has repercussions in terms of our knowing them, in terms of our ma'arifah. But it's not shirk, because shirk would be saying that they are needless, that they are the end. And auzubillah, no one is trying to say that openly. Maybe if we're doing it unconsciously, it's another issue. If we're doing it subconsciously or we're looking too much, it's another issue. But again, the bottom line is between absolute needlessness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the absolute and final end. And this really clarifies and makes simple this whole discussion, at least intellectually. Unfortunately, socially, culturally, politically, these things have all kinds of other factors. It's not just purely an Islamic issue really at all. But that's on the inna aspect and the tawassul, because it is a tawassul. Allah, there's a hadith from Baqir alayhi salam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuses, does not in His wisdom make creation except through means. And the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt, are part of that means, part of that system. It's sunnah, it's the sunnatullah. When the Quran talks about sunnatullah, it's talking about Allah's system. And part of that system is the Qadr. Is the Qadr, the Taqdir, is the divine ordainment and measuring out of things. The system of one thing leads to another. Good acts lead to good ends, bad acts lead to bad ends. That is the Qadr. That's what they call Qadr and Qada. And the Surah Al-Qadr, as the title implies, is invoking and talking about this Qadr, about this measuring out. Unfortunately, the translation is usually of the night, of power, or something along those lines. And this is based upon one rather weak interpretation about that it means Qadr means the greatness, it means Adama, it means greatness of that, it's great and glorious. But according to Ahlul Bayt, the stronger interpretation is that it is the night of the measuring out. And we'll get to that later, inshallah, maybe in another discussion. I don't want this to go too long. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Anzalnahu. Allah revealed it. What is the revelation? What is anzalna? What is the sending? Nuzul. Nuzul is sending down, something coming down. And the Quran over and over and over talks about nuzul, anzalna, nunazzil, tanzil. All these words having to do with revelation is usually how it's translated. It literally means sending down. What is this sending down of the Quran that occurred on Laylatul Qadr? Just briefly, the ayah, the beginning of Surah Al-Zukhruf. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حامين والكتاب المبين إن جعلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون وإنه في الكتاب لدينا لعلي حكيم. Hameen, by the manifest book, we have made it in Arabic Quran so that you may exercise your reason, and it is the Quran is sublime and wise with us in the mother book. So briefly, to boil it down, there's two sides of the Quran. There's two sides of everything. There's a side that is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it does not perish, that is beyond words, beyond concepts, is a metaphysical realm of things that is called many names in the Quran, Malakut. The angels are in this realm, that's Malakut, the Malaika from the Malakut, or the Ghaib, and the opposite of Ghaib, Shahada, something witnessed. The Ghaib is unseen. The Malakut is in opposition to the Mulk, to the physical realm. Some scholars say amr, khalq wa amr. Amr is the command, but it's the realm of Allah's kun fayakun, as opposed to the khalq, which is creation. All of these are ways of talking about two sides of things. The side with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is beyond the senses, beyond reasoning, in the sense that we usually know of reasoning through things, analyzing concepts, and a side that is with Allah that is only for certain people to access, only for us to access. How? Through purification. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Through tahara, through the purity of the heart, that we can reach this higher level of the Quran and everything, because the Quran says in Surah Al-Hijr, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِندَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدْرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. That there's not a thing, every single thing has treasures, has khaza'in, has its sources, and these sources are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we do not send them down, nunazzilu, send them down, except in a known measure, except in a qadr, and except in a measuring out, a certain kind of measure. So everything has this two sides to it. And this is why the Quran talks about sending down some things that doesn't make sense, like iron. We revealed anzalna al-hadid, that we revealed iron. We've sent down iron. What does it mean Allah sent down iron? I don't know, maybe there's some scientific explanation people could try to figure out. But a way that figured this out metaphysically is that the perfections, the things that iron can do, the things that anything can do, the greatness of anything, has a hidden side with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the unseen, in the malakut. And it's these two sides that the Quran has. So this sending down is not a physical sending down. It's not a typical kind of sending down. When something comes down, like rain, it's not where it was. It comes down and then it can't be two places at once. In the physical, at least as far as we know, right now, as far as I know, you can't be two places at once. And that's a sign of order. That's kind of a regular, physical, ordinary coming down. But the Quran, the coming down is it's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His knowledge, but it comes down in different ways, in different metaphysically. And this is something very difficult for us to get our hands on. All these things are very difficult, and I've said over and over again, the only way to really try to get a taste of it is to experience it and to try to develop ourselves. Because these are things we don't have experience with. It's like they say, and even I believe there's a hadith about it, that it's like the baby in the womb. The baby in the womb doesn't have any experience or knowledge when it comes out of this world around it and is shocked and is crying. And it's a whole new experience. So when we die, there's a new birth and there's a new experience. And we can't really taste that except spiritually in this life. It's a difficult thing to put your finger on, like the soul, the body and soul. These are questions that people have struggled with for centuries, philosophers of all kinds of types. The relationship between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and creation. What is the relationship of God and creation? These are difficult questions to think about, but we can kind of intuit them. We can kind of develop ourselves and get a taste of what this might mean. And I'll just end with the one problem that this kind of interpretation resolves. Because again, a lot of what I'm saying is interpretation, it's interpretive. And this is something we have to embrace as Muslims here, because interpretation is part of life. It's even its own field of study, hermeneutics. It's a field of interpreting things. We have to get into what is the bottom line Islam. What is the core of Islam that can't be touched? It's the red lines. Obviously, fasting, month of Ramadan, we can make a list of things. Maybe it's not hundreds of things. Maybe it's a dozen things. But those are very important things. Fasting, month of Ramadan is very sacred for us. The universality of Islam, that its message is for everyone and not for any particular group or class, is sacred for us. It's a red line. No one should touch that. But there are many things, including these interpretative things, and some of which I'm saying, which some scholars have come up with, which is a tool and a way to resolve certain issues we have, because there are issues when you put one thing in another. For example, we know that the Quran was revealed historically over 23 years. So how do we resolve these ayahs? Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. The ayah says we revealed the Quran, the whole Quran, apparently the meaning of it, in one night. And there are other ayahs like this too. Shahr Ramadan, the unzila fi al-Quran, the month of Ramadan. So how do we resolve? It seems like a contradiction. So this is one way, a tool of resolving that contradiction, is that The revelation of the Quran all at once is that spiritual side, the reality of the Quran in the mother of the book, in the preserved tablet, that was revealed all at once on the night of Qadr at some point in the life of the Prophet, and was revealed to his heart in a spiritual form that we are not so familiar with. We don't have contact with that in terms of our daily lives. The Quran that was the physical Quran that revealed over 23 years, that was revealed gradually, obviously, over that period of time. The first revelation was Iqra, according to the Ahl Bayt school of thought in Rajab, at the end of Rajab. So this is a tool, this is a way of resolving things and having a stronger view of what is our teachings, inshallah, so we can confront and we can deal with all of these hostile and very sick ideologies and twisted into ways of thinking, whether it's people that claim to be Muslim, whether it's non-Muslims from other religions, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to understand Quran, to reach piety, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, in this month of fasting, and to be closer to Him and to better understand the Quran and be closer to His Ahlul Bayt al-Islam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل